Hey everyone, I'm Shadows, and if you're like me and you want to get started in the Isle of Evrima but you get confused or you're a bit lost on some aspects, then this video is for you. People often ask me what the difference is between the Isle and the Isle of Evrima. Well, there's one major difference. One is the old version, one is the new version. It is really that simple. So I won't be covering the old version of the Isle because I've done that in a previous video, which you can see there if you want to check that one out later. This video will give you a basic insight into the gameplay, mechanics of carnivores, herbivores, and everything you need to know to get started. And don't worry, this video isn't going to be super lengthy. It's not going to have pictures of myself plastered all over it. It should be short and sweet and will keep you on track to get started very quickly.
Oh, there it is.
So to get started, you're going to need to download the Evrima branch, which is very straightforward. You just go to your Isle folder, click on Properties, like so, and then go to the Betas tab, which is right there, as you can see. Hit the drop-down menu and select Evrima Public Branch. Once you've done that, it will then start to automatically download for you, and you're ready to play Evrima. That simple. Next, you're going to make sure you turn that little thumbs up icon blue, so you like the video, and you're going to hit subscribe if you're enjoying the content so far. Cheeky little plug.
Hold on to your butts.
Once you launch the game, then you'll be greeted with a server option. I always hide empty, so then you can quite easily see what's full and what's not. And then I filter by the players at the top, so you always have the most filled servers at the top and you can scroll down. So then once you spawn in, you get to select your asset between dinosaurs and humans. There are no humans in the game yet, so there's only dinosaurs you can select, and that's separated into carnivores and herbivores. There are 4 carnivores and there are 4 herbivores to choose from, each with their own play styles and mechanics, so be very careful who you pick. And then once you do pick, you get a choice between male and female, which basically just means that there are subtle differences between the male and female, such as crests, etc. Once you've done that, you then have to select a spawn point. I would suggest center or southeast where the swamp is, because that's where the most players are. Or if you're brand new, spawn in somewhere quieter, such as the north, maybe east, just so you don't get attacked by hungry, angry carnivores. Rawr. So we'll start with the Herbie first. The controls for Herbie and Carnivore are exactly the same. W, A, S and D keys to move up, down, left and right, and you hold shift to sprint, which does deplete the stamina. Now if you push insert, you bring up your dinosaur's species menu, which shows you your growth, how far along you are in your growth stage, your health, how much health you have remaining if you've been attacked, your stamina bar, and your asset location, which we'll come on to in a second. Everything else is quite irrelevant on the left hand side, and the profile data is quite irrelevant at this stage as well. You can see the stamina there and you can see the health there. Your food and water are in the bottom right hand corner, and these will slowly deplete over time. Now knowing where you are in the Isle can be quite a challenge because everything looks quite similar and textures are reused, and it's a lot of grassland. So you can use that asset location up in the top right hand corner. If you click that, it copies that location to your clipboard, which you can then use on an external map outside of the game to see where your location is, because the Isle doesn't have an in-game map because it's a survival game. So I will post that link for you guys to use in the description. So now you've got an idea of the UI, you can kind of understand what's going on, and you know where you are on the map now, so you can kind of understand where you want to go. But your first things first, you want to make sure you eat, and you want to make sure you drink, and if you're a herbivore, potentially find a group. So how do you do that? So if you hold Q while stationary, you can sniff for food and water, which glow as particles. So herbivores can only eat a bush, so it'll glow green, and the green particles will flood to you, and water will come up as blue particles, and again they will flood to you. If nothing is in range, you will not sniff a single thing. The sniff will also bring up a little compass on the top of the UI, which basically shows like a valley and shows a mountain. The mountain is north, the valley is south, everything in between is never eat shredded wheat is the best way. Herbivores cannot sniff while moving, but predators can. So predators can hold Q and move at the same time where herbivores cannot. But herbivores can also graze to stop the depletion of their hunger bar. So if you keep your finger on E, it will graze and halt that hunger. You can also move while grazing, so you can keep your finger on E and move forward slowly while grazing as a herbivore. Once you're at a food or water source, because you followed them lovely little glowy particles, you hold E to eat or drink. But be careful if you're drinking near water, because Deinosuchuses do lurk and they like to ambush small little dinosaurs and drag them into the water. And if you tend to overeat, that will actually penalise you by capping a small portion of your stamina, water and hunger. So never overeat. But it's okay to overdrink. Stay hydrated, guys. The controls for a carnivore for finding food are exactly the same, using Q, but instead of finding bushes which are green, they search out tracks on the floor, which again, herbivores can see tracks with Q, and they search out corpses and blood. Again, herbivores can see this as well. So as a carnivore, you push Q, you will see red, which is the sign of a corpse, or it's the sign of someone bleeding. So the hunting mechanic for a carnivore is slightly different. You will track prey. So basically, as a carnivore, you will eat anything that moves, essentially, so you can stay alive. Follow tracks to your prey, and a good way to find prey is to listen for sounds, because AI makes sounds and players make a lot of sounds. It is directional based and it does take a little getting used to, but once you nail it, you can find lots and lots of AI and you can find players quite easily. Whether you can kill them players is another question. AI always comes in the form of a dryo, which is relatively easy to take down if you're grown enough. There is an exception to this. Deinosuchus and Pteranodon can fish, but I'm not going to cover that in too much detail on this video guide. So as I just said, tracking prey as a carnivore, you'll need to listen to noise. So how do you make noise? So dinosaurs will make what's called calls using the number pad buttons 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1 being a broadcast. If you hold the number pad down longer, it makes a further call. So the longer you hold the number, the further the call will travel. So for example, number 1 is called a broadcast, which basically tells lots of dinosaurs you're around. So the longer you hold that, the further it will travel. You can't keep spamming calls because your dinosaur does have a vocal cord, and if you keep using it, it will damage it, signaled by a little like vocally thing in the bottom right hand corner. Number 1 is broadcast, 2 is friendly call, 3 is a threatened call, 4 is a, I suppose, like submissive call. You can use F, which is a talking call. So if you are talking in a group, which we'll cover later, and you push enter to send your message, it will make a little noise as well. So be mindful of that. But what happens when you find your prey? It's combat time, so you need to know how to fight. So left click is a normal bite, right click is a special ability, such as a carnivore, if they run in, they'll attack, such as a fully grown Utah will pounce, etc, etc. Every dinosaur will have a different right click, but the left click is always usually a normal bite. You can then use alt attack, so if you keep your finger on alt and left click, it'll do an alternate attack, or alt and right click again will be an alternate attack. So be mindful of that. Lots of dinosaurs have different alt attacks, such as an ability to 180 alt attack without turning, or such as a different type of lunge or a speed attack, whatever it might be. So practice with your chosen dinosaur to make sure you know all the attacks before you get into combat. Once you're in combat, damage is locational based. So if you hit something on the tail, it's not going to do a lot of damage. Whereas if you hit something on the head, it's going to do a lot of damage. So be mindful of that. So if you are constantly biting the tail, it's not going to do much. If they're constantly biting your head, you're going to go down pretty swiftly. Growth also plays a massive factor into your combat statistics, because if you are fully grown versus a mid-grown dinosaur of the same species, that fully grown dinosaur will almost always win unless they're a very skilled player. So try and take on things which are either similar size or maybe smaller as a newbie, so you can eat things. When you are in combat, there's also a mechanic called bleed, which will show up with a little blood icon in the bottom right hand corner. Basically what this means is some dinosaurs inflict what's called a bleed. So when they attack you, they will slowly start to bleed you out. So if you fight and you're left with that bleed in the bottom right hand corner and it's at halfway, if you do not plug that bleed by either sitting or wallowing in mud, you can die. So if you continue to run around, you will eventually bleed out. So you do not want to do that. So there's 2 ways you can stop that, either by sitting down and staying sitting down by using the H key, which makes you sit, or by finding a mud source, keeping your finger on E and covering yourself in mud, which will slowly block all your cuts and bleed and will stop it momentarily. I would then suggest sitting down to further heal. bleed affects everything from life regeneration, stamina regeneration, growth, and all other stats. Now for some tips for you. So tip number 1, don't trust anybody. Now what do I mean by that? If you were playing on your own and someone's calling you and you don't know them and you haven't spoken to them in the chat, it could be a trap. Because players tend to lure other players in with the call and then attack them, usually with groups of 2 or 3. So be very careful when approaching other calls. Tip number 2, if you see a dead body near the water, be very mindful of the fact there may be a trap set by a Deinosuchus. So approach very slowly and back away if you see any type of movement in the water. And lastly, don't get too upset. Feelings are going to get hurt in this game, especially if you've just spent 6 hours growing a Stegosaurus to then be called by another group of Stegosauruses to then be killed just for the fun of it. Feelings are going to get hurt physically and mentally, so be prepared. And remember, it's just a game. And that is a quick get started guide on the Isle of Evrima. Hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to give a shout out to my Patreons Lex Rex, Dragon, Escaros, Celate, Highball, Nuggies and J72. And if you want to support me in the channel making future videos, Patreon link is in the description. I've also got lots and lots of other Isle related content to keep you guys up to date, such as news, videos, guides, funny skits. It's all on the channel. Please go and check it out. And I would like to thank my YouTube members for also supporting me, and I'd also like to thank you for watching this video, so thank you very much. I also have a Discord, so feel free to check that out. I'm Shadows, hope you enjoyed this guide, see you around.